Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Joining us now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back to Special Report.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Brett.
First of all, let me start at the beginning. Why did you launch this operation now?
Because we were facing an imminent threat, a dual existential threat. One, the threat of Iran rushing to weaponize their enriched uranium to make atomic bombs with a specific and declared intent to destroy us. Second, a rush to increase their ballistic missile arsenal into the capacity that they would have 3,600 weapons a year, new weapons, within 3 years, 10,000 ballistic missiles, each one weighing a ton, coming in at Mach 6, right into our cities, as you saw today. And then
In moments of international tension, interviews with political leaders tend to attract a great deal of attention. Many times these conversations appear on television or online while important events are still unfolding. For people who follow global news, hearing directly what authorities have to say can help provide insight into how each government interprets what is happening. In one of these recent interviews, broadcast by Fox News on the program Special Report with Brett Baier, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with journalist Brett Baier about the situation in the Middle East. The interview took place during what was described as a particularly delicate moment, with reports of attacks, military operations, and responses from different sides of the conflict. At the beginning of the broadcast, the program presents a general overview of the situation. The host mentions information that was circulating at that moment regarding airstrikes, missile launches, and possible impacts in various areas. As often happens in conflict scenarios, many of these numbers and reports appear as initial estimates that may change over time as new information is verified. Following that, the report shows images and accounts from affected areas. Rescue teams, damaged buildings, and residents trying to understand what happened are among the elements mentioned. This kind of coverage is common in broadcasts about conflicts because it helps the audience visualize the scale of the events being discussed. After this context is presented, the conversation turns directly to the Israeli Prime Minister. During the interview, Netanyahu responds to questions about the reasons that, according to him, may have led Israel to carry out certain military actions. While explaining his position, he describes a scenario that, in the interpretation presented by his government, could represent a significant threat to the country's security. In the Prime Minister's remarks, there is an indication that certain decisions may have been made based on assessments considered urgent. In many political speeches during periods of tension, this type of argument often appears when leaders attempt to explain why specific measures were taken at a particular moment. Another topic mentioned during the conversation involves Iran's nuclear program. Netanyahu refers to assessments that, according to him, might indicate technological developments that concern the Israeli government. At the same time, discussions about nuclear programs usually involve complex technical details and differing interpretations, something that is often examined by experts, governments, and international organizations. During the interview, the Prime Minister also speaks about Israel's role in the region. At certain moments, he suggests that the country's actions could be viewed by supporters as an effort not only to protect its own security, but also to preserve a certain level of regional stability. This type of argument frequently appears in political discourse related to national security. The conversation also touches on the relationship between Israel and the United States. Netanyahu mentions interactions with American authorities and speaks about cooperation between the two countries in areas related to defense and security. Historically, Israel and the United States have maintained a strategic partnership that includes military, technological, and diplomatic cooperation, although analysts often note that the dynamics of this relationship can vary depending on the political context of each period. At one point in the interview, the name of former U.S. President Donald Trump appears. Netanyahu comments on decisions made during that period and suggests that, in his view, certain policies adopted at that time may have had an impact on relations with Iran. In political interviews, it is not unusual for leaders to mention decisions made by previous administrations when explaining the current situation. Another subject discussed involves air defense systems and missile attacks. Netanyahu refers to the role of pilots and interception systems which, according to him, form part of Israel's defense strategy. In contemporary conflicts, technologies of this kind often play a central role in protecting cities and strategic facilities. However, international security analysts frequently point out that information released during conflicts may primarily reflect the perspective of one side. For that reason, experts often recommend caution when interpreting early reports, since many details may later be confirmed or revised. The interview also briefly touches on the situation in Gaza. Netanyahu presents the position of the Israeli government regarding the role of Hamas and the military operations taking place in the region. The conflict involving Gaza is a subject that frequently appears in international news, and various organizations closely monitor its developments. In many cases, authorities from different countries present distinct interpretations of events related to this conflict. While governments often emphasize aspects related to national security, humanitarian organizations frequently focus on the impact of military operations on civilian populations. During the conversation, questions also arise about negotiations and possible diplomatic agreements. Netanyahu mentions discussions related to ceasefires and the release of hostages. In prolonged conflicts, negotiations of this nature often occur alongside military operations and are sometimes mediated by different countries or international organizations. Observers of international politics often highlight that interviews like this serve not only to inform the public. In some cases, they may also function as a form of strategic communication. Statements made during such conversations can sometimes be interpreted as messages directed both to domestic audiences and to the broader international community. Another notable moment appears near the end of the interview. The host asks what message Netanyahu might want to send to the Iranian government and also to the people of Iran. The Prime Minister responds by addressing these two audiences separately, something that occasionally appears in diplomatic discourse. In situations of international tension, some leaders attempt to distinguish between governments and civilian populations. Messages of this kind can be interpreted in different ways depending on the perspective of those following the discussion. From the perspective of political communication, interviews conducted during periods of conflict often include historical references, national security arguments, and explanations about strategic decisions. These elements help construct a narrative that attempts to explain complex events in a way that is accessible to the public. At the same time, media specialists frequently remind audiences that any international conflict involves multiple narratives. Each government tends to present events from its own perspective, highlighting elements that it considers most relevant. For this reason, many people who follow global news try to compare information from multiple sources before reaching conclusions about international events. News outlets from different countries, academic analyses, and reports from international organizations may offer a variety of perspectives on the same situation. In the case of this interview, what can mainly be observed is the presentation of the Israeli government's position at that particular moment. For viewers, the content may serve as an opportunity to understand how a political leader interprets the situation and communicates those ideas to an international audience. Conflicts in the Middle East often attract global attention because they involve strategic, diplomatic, and historical issues that have developed over decades. Decisions made in the region can have implications for international alliances, energy markets, and political debates in different parts of the world. For that reason, interviews like this often become part of a broader discussion about international security and global politics. They show how leaders attempt to explain their actions, respond to questions from the press, and convey messages to the public. For those who follow this type of content, a common approach is to listen to different perspectives, analyze the historical context, and consider that many details may continue to evolve as new information becomes available. In the end, the interview becomes one more chapter in a much larger international discussion, a discussion that continues to be followed by governments, experts, journalists, and by people interested in understanding the events that shape the global landscape.